Can I please ask that the live stream is started and verbal confirmation provided when we're broadcasting?
Yes, I can confirm, Chair, that we are now live streaming.
Thank you. So, welcome to this meeting of Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee. The agenda papers and other relevant information of this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and also making a recording. The recording will be available through the Council's website shortly after the meeting is concluded. Other attendees are permitted to film, photograph, record a public meeting as long as it doesn't disturb the business of the meeting. I don't think there's anyone here that doesn't want to be filmed or photographed, nobody from the public. To ensure that recording quality is maintained, please could members speak as clearly as possible, keep background noise to a minimum. Can you make sure that your mobile phones and computers are turned to silent, please? And just before we start the meeting, I'd just like to say that I've made the decision, which I'd like you to vote on, to defer agenda item 8, which is the complaints and compliments item, and that will be deferred to the September meeting. Given that the papers were published slightly late, there has been some concern that there wasn't enough time for an adequate response. So I think in the spirit of relational working, we will defer the item. Is everybody agreed that that is acceptable? Thank you, that's agreed. So, joining us remotely, we potentially have Councillor Claire Davis at some point, but she's not here at the moment. Right, so we don't have any committee members at the moment with who are remote, and the issue of voting rights, they're not allowed to vote on resolutions of the committee but can participate in the debate. We have a number of officers present, well, a few officers, and welcome. Thank you. Possibly if you just introduce yourselves before speaking, that would be great. Do we have any apologies for absence? No apologies.
No apologies for absence received.
Thank you. And we don't have any members nominated to attend as substitutes. I would just like to welcome Councillor Hitchener to the committee. I think this is your first committee meeting, Councillor Hitchener. So thank you very much for joining, and we look forward to working with you and your valued input. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest by members in respect of items on the agenda? No declarations. Sorry, I just wanted to welcome Councillor Oliver also, who has come as a spectator. Right, so the minutes. To approve and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of May. I haven't been made aware of any corrections for accuracy. I realise, Councillor Hitchener, you weren't here. Does anybody have any points to raise about the minutes? No? Are we happy to sign them as a correct record then? Yep. Thank you. We'll just wait. So, do I need to pause? Can we just pause for a minute, please? Thank you. Thank you. Right, so questions from members of the public. Have we received any written questions from members of the public?
2 questions from members of the public were received. The questions and responses were published as a supplement to the agenda for this meeting on the Herefordshire Council website.
Thank you. And have we had any supplementary questions?
Yes, we've had one supplementary question. I shall read that out now and display it.
If I can just remind that a questioner may ask one supplementary question, and that question must be a question, not a statement, and arise directly out of the original question, and the reply must take no longer than 1 minute to ask. Wish to remind you that supplementary questions must not disclose confidential or exempt information, names of individuals, provide information where they may be easily identified. For example, individual officers of public bodies, making criminal accusations or referring to an issue which is currently the subject of a formal council complaint. As set out in paragraph 5.8.26 of the Herefordshire Council Constitution, a written response to accepted supplementary questions will normally be provided within 10 working days. Thank you. Oh, we've got the question from Ms. Reid, yeah?
The question was supplied by Miss Reid of Hereford and reads, my public question asked, how and by when will the committee appoint, and I hope appoint, 2 non-statutory co-optees, families representative and families representative send co-optees? However, the response has not answered this. Since Jan Francis was appointed on 14th of November 2023 as families representative co-optee, she has attended 3, one remotely, of 10 meetings she could have attended, last attending in September 2024. The report about the improvement plan includes a section entitled Feedback from Children and Families, highlighting its importance. Would a committee appoint a families representative co-optee and families representative SEND co-optee as soon as possible so that their perspectives can be heard?
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Reid, for your question. Just to clarify that the Constitution was amended, so we're not committed to having family co-optees or SEND co-optees, but I take your point on board, and we will actually be looking at the situation with our co-optees when we have our work programming session, and we will discussion around the co-optees. So we will be looking to at how we can supplement our committee with some expertise to make it more efficient. Thank you. Right. So, questions from members of the council. Have we received any written questions from members of the council?
No questions received.
Thank you. Right. Therefore, we move to agenda item 7, which is the Herefordshire Children's Services and Partnership Improvement Plan. And that is to scrutinise the Children's Services Partnership Improvement Plan Phase 3 and the Quality Assurance Framework. So I would just also like to congratulate the Director of Children's Services, Tina Russell, on your permanent appointment. So you are no longer the interim. And that's great news. It's great news for the service, and I'm sure everybody's really pleased to have that stability. So I assume that you're going to lead on this item, and thank you.
I am. Have I turned myself on? Yes, I am. And thank you for that. I have had some very nice responses to my permanent appointment. So, yes, I'm pleased to be joining permanently. So the letter, the report that's in front of you kind of tries to just give an introduction really in terms of how we've laid out the Phase 3 improvement plan. And then the second section goes into specific detail around the quality assurance framework as was requested by Scrutiny. So the key thing is just setting out at the beginning is that we've had 3 monitoring visits over the last 12 months, and all 3 of those monitoring visits have reported very positively on the services within children's services. That first one back in October looked specifically around harm to children outside of the family home, that exploitation harm, and whilst that is a small, distinct specialist part of the service, Ofsted did look at how that specialist team, the Get Safe team, works with the wider services through early help, through to child protection and children looked after. So bespoke specialist team, but did look wider into the service. Ofsted then came back for a further monitoring visit and looked at a much wider area of the service under the assessment teams. So that's a real crucial part of the service where we receive those referrals at that front door from the public, from partners, from agencies, and from families themselves, and we undertake that assessment. And that's a much bigger area of the service, and it's really important that the quality of assessments and the timeliness that they're completed is done well. And we had a really positive report with regards to exactly that: the comprehensive assessments, the timeliness, the contribution of parents, young people, and also of the right professionals involved in those assessments. So we were really pleased with that as well. And then the third and the final monitoring visit from last year was the one that focused on children in care. So an even bigger part of the service, and obviously the part of the service that we're corporate parents for. So another key area of the service. And as you read that letter, I don't think anybody could fail to read the positive findings of Ofsted with regards to the relationships that social workers were making with children, the increasing stability that children were receiving because of the increased stability of permanency that we've got within our workforce, the quality of the care planning, the timeliness of the care planning, the positive relationships that those staff have got with their children and young people. And certainly it concluded overall an outcome of positive outcomes for children that are in care of the local authority. The reason I've put those three things there as that reminder is because this is the independent, Ofsted are the independent eyes really of the outcome of the improvement plan. And what we've been working through 24-25 is phase 2 of that improvement plan. And you see in Ofsted's findings the impact and outcome of that improvement plan. And in that last letter, Ofsted were particularly noted the sustained pace now of improvement that they could see across the service. So really pleased with that. So in terms of the phase 3 plan, we've, as you might imagine, adopted a very similar approach. We've made sure that we have continued with that simplistic approach with a plan on a page for staff in particular. Improvement plans can be very comprehensive, lots of activity going on, but it was really important for us in phase 2 and continues to be that the staff just understand what it is that Ofsted said we weren't doing well and what they need to do to know whether they are doing well. So we really break it down in a plan on a page with setting out the recommendations that Ofsted made and then saying these are the quality assurance indicators that will tell us when we are doing a better practice in these areas. And that's why I'll come on to the quality assurance in a bit more detail. So we stick with that plan on the page, and the staff really fed back that they found that quite useful to be able to see as well. The other things that this phase 3 does is it really reflects where we've moved on to as a children's service. So firstly, it incorporates the implementation of the Families First programme. So that's part of the government's welfare reform. We're in a really strong place in order to implement that. Some of the developments that we've done over this last 12 months have set the foundations, the structures in place for that Families First programme to then be implemented through this following 12 months. And I've also set out the work that Herefordshire is doing within the region. And so I think very historically, Herefordshire haven't perhaps been as evident and visible within the regional footprint. But it's really important that we are, both so that we can learn what's happening of best practice across the 14 local authorities that combine to bring West Midlands region together, but so that they can also incorporate our views and our experiences within that regional development. So both of those, we're in that place now. We can. It's not just about looking inward, it is about by inward I mean inward to Herefordshire and its partners. It is about looking at the national programme and our regional programmes and the priority plans that are in place and really making a very valid contribution to all of those as well. So that's why you can see those in that phase 3 plan. During 24-25, one of the big things that we developed was our quality assurance programme. And I just reinforce and set out here for what that means for us as a children's service. So the quality assurance programme is how we know ourselves well. It's how we understand the experience that children and families are having following an intervention with our children's services. Are we making a positive difference to the lives of those children and families? But also, are we being an employer of choice? So it spans that whole sort of range of children and families we work with, but also staff that work within our services. And the quality assurance framework has got three key areas that come together to make it a comprehensive framework. One is case file audit, the audit of practice. The second one is service user feedback. And the third one is our key performance indicators. And the report sets out, in what I hope is relatively simple terms, what we do in each of those. So our case file audit, very simply, we have a monthly programme. Monthly, we audit about 16 cases, individual cases that are selected randomly each month. We have 2 auditors for every case that's audited. Those 2 auditors audit that case independently. Then they come together to see what they have graded the case as individually. Each case is graded under 5 different domains, as I've written down there. And then we compare those audits and have an action plan if there's anything that we need to do. And what we've developed in service is a grade descriptors. So the grade descriptors will describe, if we audit now a case and we say that this is a good case, or this is a case that requires improvement, or this is an inadequate case, you can see in the grade descriptor document the sorts of things that we are identifying that give us that outcome grading. We will constantly review that grading form to make sure that we're always challenging ourselves on what the very best practice looks like. So those 16 audits are done each month, and then Susie Sims, who's sitting next to me here, is our service manager for quality assurance, and so each month she will analyse those 16 audits. What's the strengths that we're identifying? Where's the development areas? Are we identifying any patterns and trends in teams or in individuals? And then she will look at that month to month to month and bring a quarterly analysis report together. So that's what we do when we talk about the audit activity. And within those audits, we also speak to children, young people and parents. So we contact them at the beginning of the audit and ask them if we let them know that their case has been randomly sampled as an audit, and would they like to tell us how they are experiencing the intervention. So the second part of that family's feedback is that requesting them to engage within audits, but in addition we also contact parents at the end of an intervention, so when the case closes. So you can imagine if a case closes after a period of children in need intervention or child protection intervention or children care intervention, it's perhaps been open a longer period of time. But we also contact them at the end of an assessment intervention. So we have many more that close after an assessment intervention. That's a much shorter period of time, as you can imagine. So parents are always invited through a code within the letter, within the closure letter, to contribute to an online survey, which they can do anonymously. But in order to drive up our contributions, we also have the support of our administration team, who will call, again, random sample, dip sample, who will call parents and say, your case is closed within the last week or 2 weeks. We'd be really happy if you could answer 10, 15 questions for us and tell us what your experience has been like, and then they will fill that survey in. And again, we then compile what those service users are telling us, children, people and parents, and we have a quarterly family service user feedback report. And then the third part, as I say, of that quality assurance is our key performance indicators. So there are over 100 kind of statutory key performance indicators that exist. We also have some management information data that we manage for our services. And within phase 2, I developed an improvement key performance indicator dashboard that went alongside the improvement plan. We've developed that because we've got a bit better and a bit more sophisticated now. So we've developed that for phase 3. And then what happens is that we are, as a senior management team, able to bring together what the case audit is telling us, what our service users are telling us, and what our key performance indicators are telling us. And those are the 3 things that tell us what we are doing and how well we're doing as a service. And then obviously we've got the improvement board that scrutinises those reports, and then we've also got the independent Ofsted monitoring visits that come in and look at those as well as obviously yourselves. So phase 3 plan does set out that quality assurance framework against the Ofsted recommendations. So there's a range there. It might be a key performance indicator, it might be service user feedback, or it might be something that we look for specifically in audit. So we've tried to match a range of those to each of the Ofsted outcomes. And then the remaining part of the document, which is, you'll find at the appendix, which is the full plan, the remaining section is the actual activities, the actions that are going to be taking place. And you'll see in each of those, they've got a lead person so that we can make sure that we're monitoring all the time. These are particular actions that we believe need to be completed to get us through this next 12 months. And the service are now in a position where we're waiting for our full inspection of local authority children's services, which will be before the end of this year, because that's the timetabling for Herefordshire. So hopefully that gives a good overview. I have got Susie with me, who is relatively new to Herefordshire, but has been here since February, as a good reminder, and works very closely with me and the team, and also our learning and development team. So all the learning that comes from those monthly and those quarterly reports feeds into the workshops, the briefing and the training that we provide to social workers and social care workers. So I'm happy, and I'm sure supported by Susie, to answer any questions that anybody's got.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I have to say, and welcome Susie, because it's not that long, it doesn't feel that long since Scrutiny actually looked at the quality assurance, and there seems to be a significant amount of work that's been done since then. So I was looking through the recommendations, and you know they've all been sort of incorporated into the work that you're doing. So I'm sure councillors have questions, but I might actually just start and you know, just I wanted to say about the improvement plan, phase 3. I thought it was very easy to read. It was very clear. It set out exactly what we needed to do against the Ofsted recommendations. It was good to see what had been achieved in phase 2, and I think that's really helpful to actually see how far we've come in what does again feel like quite a short period of time, because it didn't feel that long ago that Ofsted monitoring visits were saying the pace of change needs to increase, and you know, and now it feels like we've done that leap. So that's really good to see. In terms of the improvement sort of plan, and I think specifically the quality assurance, I'm interested to know sort of what this increased quality assurance work is telling us about what we actually need, the work that we really need to sort of focus on at the moment. So that's one question. And then the second question, which is more of an overarching question about the improvement journey, because obviously we still have an improvement board, and that will continue until, I assume, until the ILACs, and hopefully Ofsted will sort of, whatever comes will be positive. But it's just really where we go from that, how we make sure that elected members are sort of well versed in that journey. you talk about the KPIs. I think we've had this issue of getting data for the committee, and we've got some action on that. But I think it would be quite good to look at how we empower elected members with the data and KPIs going forward, so that there's always an informed eye on the service and the KPIs and that kind of post improvement journey. I was one of the members that was here when we had the bombshells, and we didn't know what was going on. So I think that's a really important part in making sure that members come along on the journey. So maybe if we could just look at that question about in terms of what the QA process is actually telling us about the service, and then maybe it's the kind of post improvement is a later question. There might be more questions about that coming up.
Okay, I'll try and break that down a little bit into answering the bits of questions, maybe a little bit backwards. So, in terms of the KPIs, now we're much more established, and I think Scrutiny will remember having the discussion back in July last year, and I know at that point Scrutiny was saying that they had been asking for years for some key performance indicator information and analysis. I'm very grateful to Scrutiny to giving me that 12 months to establish that dashboard. We have a challenge within the council with regards to capacity and technical skill. If I explain it very simply, we have a software program called Mosaic, which the social workers and social care workers use as their case recording. And then we have a separate software program called Power BI, and Power BI has to pull out reports and data reports for me to be able to analyse and to read. And we haven't had the great coordination between developments that have happened in Mosaic and developments that have happened in Power BI. So there's been some developments that have happened independently of each other, and that's given us historically some data accuracy challenges. Is the Power BI report pulling all of the right information from all of the right places? We've needed to recheck all of that, as well as do the developments to Mosaic, so that the staff have got an easy place to input information. And then on top of that, we've got the statutory reporting indicators, which of course are the key ones that I want to look at on a regular basis. But I also want, and my managers also want, the ability to say, well, I've heard this from service users, or I've seen this in case file audit, I'd like a report on that. Power BI, pull that out of Mosaic for me. And that needs a coded written report to be able to do that. So we've had real challenges with enough skill within the people that we have in order to do that. And I have to say that technical skill is not just a Herefordshire shortage, it is absolutely a national shortage. So, but the team, the performance team and the IT team have worked really closely with me over this past 12 months in developing, making sure that we've got that improvement board dashboard that I am now able to do that analysis over. And that's what I've said I can now provide in a non-public meeting to Scrutiny, and I can go through with you the analysis and we can have that conversation, which will enable you to feel informed around the KPI part of things. Similarly, with the audit, the QA reports that we get from quality assurance, we can give some headlines, but they are quite comprehensive reports. They're not reports that it would be appropriate in terms of public viewing. They need a lot of understanding and analysis to go through, and I would have spent my full-time job answering individual little questions if they were. So we're trying to get the right balance between making sure that Scrutiny are armed and informed with your ability to develop your work programme as well as ask your questions. In terms of what the overall is telling us, you'll see, I think I did put it in the quarter 3 report, is that overall the quality of practice is getting better overall. We have some strong areas that are consistently strong. Diversity, making sure that we identify the child's specific equality and diversity issues, and we incorporate that into their needs, their assessment and their plans. The voice of the child is also a consistently strong message that comes through in our audit activity. When it comes to parents' voices, what we need to get better at is making sure that when you read the assessment, the parent can read their own views separately to the analysis that's been written by the social worker. So we will have factual information and we have social work professional analysis. And what we find from the feedback of parents is that they want to see what their views are, and they need to see it written explicitly, separately. Mother said this, she didn't agree with this. Father said this, he didn't agree with this. So that it doesn't get incorporated into the social work analysis, if that makes sense. So we need to get a little bit better and more consistent on that. And as part of the Families First programme, we're developing our assessment document. And so we're making sure that we incorporate that and the way that we write the reports into that assessment document. The other thing that we need to do is write assessments in child-focused language. We weren't great at that. We are much better at that now. We can see that coming through in terms of our improvements. The working together was a new question that we asked as part of our safeguarding partnership. We were really pleased once we started asking that question. The majority of parents by far say that they think that the professionals do work well together. But again, the more we get sophisticated with this, the more we can get more sophisticated in our questions. So we're going to adapt those questions a little bit more to say, do you feel that the working together enables you to not have to repeat your story all the time? Do you feel when an individual agency comes to meet with you, this agency, health for example, as well, and then separately the social worker comes to meet with you, do you get a sense that they are working to what has been the agreed plan? So we can get a little bit more sophisticated now in the questions, so understanding the analysis that we're getting there. But that working together was another positive outcome. Quality of oversight, quality of partnership working. The other challenge area that we had was the supervision and management oversight. So there are two big practice issues actually in there that we've incorporated. Supervision being timely and recorded was better, but not always making sure that between supervisions the managers were going back to the social worker and saying, well, this is what we discussed last time, let's just make sure there's progress on those actions. So that was something that we identified wasn't a strength, and we're continuing to do that. And the other one was the managerial footprint on the child's file. So there's lots of conversations and case discussions that managers will have with their staff when they're managing a case. And whilst the social workers themselves will report that they have good access to managers, good access to be able to get guidance from them, conversations with them, when you look at the child's file, those conversations weren't consistently written up on the child's file. So again, it's making sure that our managers, you are writing this up, you've had that conversation, write it up, put it on the child's file. So that kind of, over some of those domains, gives you a little bit of an insight in terms of what we were doing well, where their strengths are, and where some of the things that we need to improve are.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Proctor, you have a question?
Just following up on a couple of those things. Because I'm a data nerd, the line about making Mosaic and Power BI work better jumped out at me. Partly because there will come a point when Power BI is too limited for you. So I'd be starting to think about what are we doing after that? And then I have a question which is more for Councillor Powell, which is what is the Cabinet doing to make sure that we have the right resources in the Council to deal not just with these data demands, but also to get ahead of services and to be coming forward and saying, actually, where you're going next, these are the solutions and the not just the technical solutions, but the skills, the data analysis, data science.
Okay, thanks. So we are fully sighted on the issues that Tina's described, both locally and nationally, and it is a national problem. There have been a round of recent briefings amongst a whole range of roles, but in my particular role, elsewhere as a scrutiny, a range of briefings hosted by the Association of Safeguarding Professionals about where artificial intelligence might help in the future with some of these data challenges. But that needs to be approached with caution for a whole range of reasons that you all appreciate. In terms of Cabinet being able to do certain things, we understand the directors and indeed the council's challenges around current limitations of the relationship between Mosaic and Power BI. The work in Mosaic, when certain elements of work were undertaken, they were undertaken for an understandable reason, but they weren't undertaken in a way which acknowledged that somebody might drill into a particular report or want to drill into a report. So it's taken pretty well 2 years worth of understanding that and agreeing a way forward. So we are where we are. We are on a sort of forward journey with it. What comes next, I don't know, because I'm not a data nerd. But what I would say is Tina and her team have worked incredibly hard, as you've described, with that relationship between Mosaic and Power BI to get us into a place where, to use the expression that is in the report, the data alongside the feedback from families and children and the audit quality gets us in a place where we understand ourselves well, we know ourselves well. The director in her report has identified where we've achieved against certain outcomes, but also acknowledged where we know we've got more to do, and those play forward into phase 3. So it isn't a perfect world, and there are a lot of moving parts, but we are doing as much as we can to make sure that the council is enabled to provide the information that we need.
Sorry, just to follow that up a bit more. So I guess the Cabinet are not expected to be technical experts, but I think the reality is it will cost more money to have more data analysts, more technology within the council, and the Cabinet definitely can be doing some thinking about how is that something that this service is going to have to find, or is that something that will be found corporately? And so that we're not that far from next year's revenue budget. So what conversations are you having at Cabinet level around resourcing this sort of need, which is not so obviously within this, just within the service?
Okay, so an element of that is in the transformation work. So I need to go back and have a more detailed discussion about exactly that. But we are sighted on the challenges. We have a finite budget. There is a balance. Some of this is not available nationally, and we are working with a range of moving parts. But it is not that we are not sighted on it. Not that we need resolution. We recognise that we need resolution. But actually, some of this is about understanding where we can improve efficiency rather than just having to pay more money. We can use what we have more effectively and in a smarter way. Hence that description of the relationship between Mosaic, which holds the information, and Power BI, which can be configured to run a particular query, if you like. So there are a whole range of things there that are kind of going on simultaneously.
Can I add to that from a service perspective as well? So for me, Power BI has not yet exhausted what it can do for me and my managers. There is absolutely more it can do with that development. And I think actually within the council, the performance team and the IT team with Children's Services is a really good example over the last 12 months how they have prioritised that. I would say I feel that they have prioritised me and what I need. They have fed back to me that they think that I have helped them in terms of being able to focus what it is I need rather than flood them with wants and needs. Being a data guru, as you say, I actually love data as well, and I think we will all accept that the more data we have, the more we want, because the more we want to cross-reference it, challenge it, cross-reference it, do with it. And we've had to be restrained and controlled about what we need and what we actually, and what we've got. So there's more development, but we are doing that development slowly. The elements that feed into that is that we've got Mosaic as our software program, our case management program. Updating, changing that are things that we have discussed. I nearly had a minor stroke at the beginning of last year when the talk was that we had to change Mosaic. We couldn't have Mosaic as our software program because it was coming to the end of its life, and made a very strong case to say absolutely not. Not in Children's Services, not helpful, not necessary now. We can use it for longer. There are pros and cons with all sorts of there are Framework I, Liquid Logic and Mosaic. That's what's out there amongst 152 local authorities, Children's Services. We're using Mosaic. We may be able to do bits to it. We may be able to add to it. It is not the best. It is definitely not the worst. So for me, it's about making sure that we get the best out of the system rather than going, well, we just need a new system and then giving everybody chaos for. And I have worked in 2 local authorities where we've had to change the software system, and it is an extremely time-consuming, complex thing to do. What I've been clear with our staff is that the limitations and just the pace that we have to work at in terms of the reports that we've got do not mean that we can't develop and deliver good service. We have got enough. We've got enough of the basics and some. The things that I would like are would likes. They're not must-haves. We need to make sure that we're absolutely clear on the must-haves and they're in place and we get them regularly. We've got really too much manual tracking happening. And for my service, I would like to reduce that. The reason they've got manual tracking happening is because Mosaic and Power BI weren't giving us what we needed. So for me, that's kind of the next step. Let's replace the manual tracking with this. But the manual tracking does give us the information. So we're able to do a little bit of both. It's not data analysts that we are particularly short of. The data, when it comes through, gives me, it's factual, it's data, it's there, it's numbers, you can see it. And for me, it's always been important that it is the service and the management within the service that apply that service analysis. What is that telling us? And that's why you'll see me often cross-reference this KPI with that KPI, because very rarely is one of them in isolation telling you anything useful. You need to cross-reference it with something else in terms of making sure it's there. So from a service perspective, and we have started to use AI, we've been piloting Magic Notes. It's been very helpful to people. And so we're wanting to follow up in terms of that being rolled out for us across Children's Services, if not the council. So I think, as Ivan says, as a service, we are making sure that Council and Cabinet know what our challenges are, but we're also being realistic about making sure we can make progress. And we've shown in the Ofsted reports we can make progress with what we've got, and we will continue to develop that. But we need to do that at pace rather than just think, right, okay, we need a new system or we need loads more data, or just controlled, understand, and then move to the next step. Controlled, understand, and move to the next step is the approach that we use.
Okay. Have you got another question?
It'll move us on. So
Okay, that's all right. If you want to move us on, yes.
it does kind of follow from this, but this conversation is starting to think about further improvement, and I'm slightly confused about whether the improvement plan takes us to the end of the calendar year or the financial year. But either way, after that, there will have to be something else, and I guess the hope and expectation is that we will not be an inadequate service at that point. So some of the drivers for improvement will change. So how are we going to keep the improvement momentum going?
You're absolutely right. The improvement, phase 3 of the improvement plan is for the year. But we will be having our ILAC by the end of the year. So by default, we will absolutely, of course, review the last quarter of that improvement plan based on the outcome findings of our ILAC. I am very confident we are not an inadequate service. I have worked in an inadequate service and I have worked with them and got to RI and then good. We are not an inadequate service, and I would absolutely expect to have that as a finding. It was interesting for me writing phase 3 because it did feel like I was writing more of a children's services business plan. So every year I would write my business plan like every department or company does. What is it that we want to do and achieve this year? What are our key challenges? And it did feel a lot more like that doing phase 3 than it did phase 2. Phase 2 felt like we have got some key improvement actions that we really need to galvanise. One of them being that there wasn't a QA framework. We weren't asking service users. We didn't have KPIs within our improvement plan. And we were doing an audit activity, but we weren't looping it, we weren't having the learning from it. So writing phase 3 felt very different to me. The improvement board is likely to stay whilst we are inadequate, but once we're not an inadequate authority anymore, I expect that the improvement board will close down. And we will then have the normal regime of scrutiny that a children's service has. Scrutiny and the annual programme being one of those things. We will continue, like every local authority children's services, to have either focused visits or joint area targeted inspections, JTIs, as part of the Ofsted programme, alongside every other children's service, so we'll have that. And we will continue to have our quarterly report through our quality assurance framework. So all of those things will stay in place, and that's how we will do that scrutiny. And CLT, obviously the corporate leadership team reporting there, cabinet reports reporting there.
Yeah, do you want to come back? Then Councillor Hitchener's got a question.
I guess one of the risks, it seems to me, like the only good thing about an inadequate judgment is everybody accepts that substantial change has to happen, and we know, like if you come to an SMB meeting, you will hear lots of councillors who say, well, we're spending lots of money on children's services and I would rather spend it over here. And so the risk is that the political imperative for change drops off when Ofsted get off our back. We have an unusual situation where the lead member is not of the ruling party. So how can we be assured that it will remain a political priority for the controlling administration?
Well, if I say, sorry, Ivan, if I just say first, I think that's when you come to the roles of your Director of Children's Services. I have a statutory responsibility to make sure that I am enabled and supported to deliver good quality services to children and families. And Ivan will have his lead member statutory role to work with me to enable me to do that, and vice versa. So that doesn't go away. That drive for continued improvement doesn't leave the room when the inadequate judgment. The other thing, though, that to remember is that the experience that Herefordshire have had of having that inadequate judgment, and for such a prolonged period of time, and prior to the inadequate judgment, the poor peer review, where it was identified then that there were significant concerns. So learning from that, coupled with a lead member and a director who are going to be saying, this is the investment the services need, this is what we're doing for improvements, and those QA things, and evidencing where there is any drop, and also evidencing where and how we can make improvements, that for me is part of our job and our role that we will continue to do, regardless of party.
And just to add to that, if I could, you'll appreciate that I'm a newly elected member, so this is my first term. There are many in the council who have been elected, an elected member during that much more difficult period. When I started in this post, I look across the room to Councillor Hitchener, who was the leader of the council previously, and some of his colleagues who were in the administration were good enough to take the time to give me their views, give me a handover briefing, as it were. And I spoke to a range of people and said, can we please be assured that we are 53 of us all in this together, both as corporate parents, but also as people who are charged with looking after some of the most vulnerable children in our community. So it must not be a political football. And there was not one person who spoke out about that. I absolutely get your point that, you know, as things move on, other pressures will come to bear. Well, that'll be, as the director has said, she has the statutory responsibility and the lead member has a responsibility politically that sits alongside that. So I will be doing my utmost to make sure that we don't slip back. And I will gladly have conversations, both of encourage, accepting there will be appropriate challenge within that. I think my view would be we collectively make sure that doesn't happen, and we have a responsibility to do so.
Thank you. Councillor Hitchener, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Tina, the most recent report must have been a delight to have received, and my congratulations to you and your team for this, for the outcome. I'm quite interested in the use of the word sort of improved at pace, because that's been a consistent criticism for a long, long time, and suddenly we changed. You know, we are now improving things at pace. And really a little bit in the context of Ben's sort of questioning about how do we keep it going in the future. I'm quite interested to hear your reflections on how you moved from a department which wasn't moving at pace to now moving at pace. Kind of what does that mean? What does it look like? What particular things did you, just 2 or 3 things you did? Because those are the learnings which we need to take forward. We're delighted you have taken up the process of being permanent, but you're not going to be here forever. And we need, you know, we're on the right path. We're moving at pace. How do we make sure that happens? Thank you.
So when I first joined, in fact, before I joined Herefordshire, but knew that I was joining, I had a little bit of time to work through, and I was reading at that point the improvement plan that was in place, and I'm experienced in children's services, and I struggled to get past page 15 of the improvement plan, the history of the previous improvement plan, if I'm honest. And like I said, it was also, so it was a dense read, but it also was absent of quality assurance measures. Well, how will I know when I'm doing well then? And that for me was reflective of what I found very quickly when I joined the service. So a lot of people working very hard, but feeling like and being at a lot of meetings. Almost every action, there was a task and finish group, there was a work stream, there was a meeting, and that was creating problems with pace of improvement, because there was just a lack of decision making, a lack of focus, and a lack of direction. And that's not to blame anybody in particular, because when things don't improve, people become anxious. And when people become anxious, everybody wants a bit more information, another meeting, something writing down. And people become anxious about making decisions as well, in case they make the wrong decision. And you build all these things together, and you do get a bit of a storm that happens. And I think that that had happened here. One of the biggest parts of feedback that I've had is staff and partners have fed back to me that they have really appreciated the focus and the direction and the decision making. What is it we're trying to achieve? Right from frontline workers, well, what do you want me to do? Managers, how should I do this? And that's what I meant about the plan on the page, the specific actions we did away. In fact, last summer, I wrote to the staff all in August and said, we're having a summer recess. Stop meetings. I don't want people to be having meetings through August. Partly everybody's really busy because 25% of the workforce at any one time are on holiday, and the other 75% are looking after their workload, and vice versa. And everybody's it's a busy time. So there was just that kind of approach. So some of the pace has just been picked up by that approach of working, and that's in place, that's there, and that's not difficult to continue. Some of the other approach has been improved because of the quality assurance framework, because it's given us the focus of knowing what it is we're doing well and what we're not doing well. And again, that's not a difficult thing to continue. So both of those things are well embedded. And then the last thing that I would say is the permanency in the workforce. So we had a lot of agency, but it wasn't just about agency, it was about turnover. So again, stability in the workforce, including stability in your long-term agency, focus on what it is that we need people to do, and very, very busy people that just need to know, clearly, distinctly, and making decisions. And that would be the biggest feedback I've had. And they're the things that I think we've been able to evidence our pace through that kind of different approach, and they're easy things to continue.
Can I just ask one supplemental? So we've been on this journey for let's say 4 years, 5 years. What could we have done to have got to the position we're in now more quickly?
Well, I suppose implicitly is what I've kind of just said, more focus earlier on, more direction, more clarity, more decision making, less meetings, less talking, less talk shops, workshops, more focus and what it is you needed to do. We did lots of audit activity, for example, so we did lots and lots of audit, but we never closed the loop sufficiently on, so what did those 16 audits tell us? Now what do these 16 tell us? Now what do these 16 tell us for 3 months? Now what does that quarter tell us? So it was the looping, case by case, but then overarching. So a really good example is if you're doing audits and you're regularly saying to your workforce, we've got 50% that are good and 50% that requires improvement, and you're telling your workforce that, the workforce need to understand at a level that's different to scrutiny. They need to understand, is it still me that's RI? Is it still me? Do I need to be doing something? Is it my team? And we weren't breaking it down to that level of detail. We were just kind of up here still doing too many audits with a overarching outcome. So we weren't drilling down enough. And that's why we've got, so the KPI information, again, I can drill that down, and my managers can drill that down to individual workers, to individual teams, to individual service areas. The same with audit, the same with service user feedback. That's not for public reporting, it wouldn't be appropriate to be, but I know it, my managers know it, we talk about it, and we're therefore able to home in on those staff that need support, development or performance managing, those services that need development or performance. We're able to do all of that, and that in itself gives you pace on improvement.
Thank you. So we've got Councillor Highfield and then Councillor Davis also have questions. If I can just butt in very quickly, use my chair prerogative and just say that alongside all of that work, one of the significant changes that we've seen is the relational practice, restorative practice, think family approach. So there is a whole different sort of culture of how we work with children and families in Herefordshire, which is really, really wonderful to see. One of the statistics that sort of came out was that I read was that we've got 73% of children in a family setting, and I just wondered, is that 73% of looked after children? Are they within a family setting? That's going to be significant for the service and more importantly for the children involved. But I wanted to know sort of how do we know that relational practice is embedded in the service? When will we know that, or is that just an ongoing journey?
Well, I guess some of the KPIs that we use so that we can see where we are working with families at that lower voluntary level more frequently. That's an outcome of strength-based relational practice with families. The other one would be a service user feedback. We ask families, do you think we've made a positive difference to the way we work with you? Have we listened to your views and take them into account? So that's a service user feedback, what we'd ask. And then in our audit activity, we look for the evidence of that direct work that's been undertaken with the family, the child. So we look for that relational practice evidence in our KPIs, in our audit activity, and in our service user feedback. One of the key ones would be, last year we issued 21 new care proceedings cases compared to 41 the year before. That is about us managing risk within the family and within that wider family. But that management of risks comes with a whole combination of things that enable workers to do that. Stability in management, feeling like you're supported with good decision making in management, feeling like the partnership are on board with managing risk, rather than everybody being very, very anxious at doing the wrong thing or something happening to a child that then somebody's wanting to find the person to blame for. All of these things, an unstable workforce, unstable management, all of these things feed that professional anxiety, that process-driven approach. So it is about putting the conditions in service, manageable workloads, even manageable office, positive office space where you can sit with a colleague and have a conversation, where you can be local to your local health centre, your school. All of these things play a part in creating those conditions for good social work to flourish.
So, and that would include the family's first sort of transference to locality working. That all makes a difference.
Yeah.
The other question I just wanted to sort of stick in there quickly was about the repeat referrals and child protection. So although we can see that they're down, but there are still children who are sort of coming back on, are being referred back. And I just wonder sort of what's that about, and how do we anticipate that might move?
Well, our repeat referrals is measured within two parts. One is repeat referrals ever. So at any point in a child's life, have they had a repeat child protection plan? And the other one is a repeat within 2 years. So the first one, for me, in my world and in my view, it's not necessarily a bad thing that a child has been subject to a repeat child protection plan ever in their lives. Sometimes families can make changes that then those changes regress. Partners, for example, that have left households have come back. Those are the things that very often mean that the re-emergence of a child protection plan happens. It might be any of those combinations. The issue for us is making sure that when those repeat plans come back, we understand why they've come back. When it's within 2 years, there's a different analysis on that for me, because that's a short space of time. So again, it's the detail of why has that family come back this quickly, and looking at what was the impact of the early help, the family help, that after their intervention, that family stepped down from the service. How did that family help continue to help them, not raise back up to the child protection level. But it might be a positive indicator. It might be that the partnership are working with the family, and actually it is right that the partnership that were there, the wider family that were there to support that family now they've stepped down, have identified concerns raising back up, and rather than waiting and waiting and waiting, they've got back in very quickly and referred back in, and that's why you'll find that nationally, I'm going to have to quote a data here, and I'll always quote the wrong one, but nationally 21% of children are re-referred within 2 years, and for me, so it's, and we're in line within that 2 years now, so it's not a big problem. We're above the national average. We're above the national average for children who have come back for a repeat plan ever. But that's about us trying to analyse why those children are coming back now, what we're doing now. But for those children that are coming back within 2 years, we're much lower, and we're reducing those numbers of children that are coming back within 2 years. So that's a positive indicator on the longevity of the outcome that we can look at. It's the repeat within a social work assessment within 12 months where we are needing to reduce our numbers.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Highfield, you had a question, then Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chairman. First thing I wanted to say was that Councillor Proctor raised the question of politics, and I'm part of the ruling group, and I can tell you I've not met anybody who's playing politics with this topic. And Councillor Powell, he may be only in the same length of time as me in the council, but he's not new to this topic, and he was chosen for a reason, which I think he's demonstrated is absolutely the right choice, and he gets the full support of the ruling group, who are all on his side. Of course, there are financial constraints. We don't know when a SEND child is going to turn up and cost us another £1 million a year. It's just random. But within those constraints, I'm sure that everything is going to be done to give support for this topic, to make sure you're resourced properly. So moving on a little bit, I read this report carefully. I'm delighted. I have to say, I found it very hard to be critical of anything in here. I read the letter, and I was delighted to see the letter that came in with the support that showed. But we are Scrutiny, so we do have to try and find something where we can suggest something. And so on that topic, I'll divide it into 2 questions to make it easy for you. So we start with the first one. You talked about random cases that are brought up for audit. Is it possible that you could add to that 1 or 2 nominated cases where it comes up that there's clearly a problem with that case? Is it worth auditing that rather than being wholly random? So that's the first question. Do you think that's a worthwhile consideration?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'll split it up so you don't have to have 2 or 3 questions all in one go.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yes, we do that. We call it a case review. So we will choose cases for that, but we will also do targeted audits. So whilst we have that monthly audit on dip sample random cases, we will have targeted audits where we've identified a particular issue, and so we will look at all the cases where that has been a particular issue. So we will have those targeted audits. But where we've got a case that's got multiple issues, we're likely to call that a case review. So we will review that case and see where our learning comes from in an individual case.
Right, that's lovely, that answer that. And the second part of that, which is also related to audit, is auditing not a case particularly, but a procedure. Now, and to give a specific example, we look at the Ofsted recommendations, and there is a thing there about what that means for audit and documentation, but that doesn't actually talk about the actual step-by-step procedures that are done to achieve that. Is it worth, in addition to your case audits, is it worth having an audit that looks at the actual step-by-step procedures? Is it efficient? Is it going to be the most manpower effective way of getting to that we need to do? Do we have something, is that worth having an audit along those lines?
as part of our targeted audits, we do sometimes do compliance audits, particularly when we have either implemented a new process step by step. We will do a compliance audit to understand how it's working and if it's being complied with. And then we will ask ourselves, if it's not being complied with, why not? And we're not bureaucratic, so we won't say it's not being complied with, everybody needs to be told off. We'll say, why isn't it being complied with? Could we do it in a better way that means that people can comply? Or we will identify that, you know, what are the barriers to compliance if it needs to be complied with. So yes, we do targeted audits based on process, either when we're getting feedback that those processes are not happening. So I can give you examples if you want me to give you examples.
No.
Okay.
Well, that's part of the answer. The reason I come to this is I worked for an organisation that tended to look at, are we getting what we wanted to do? Did we achieve our objective? And if not, of course, there's a big why. But if we did achieve our objective, okay, great. And nobody said, well, we did it in the easiest way, the best way, the quickest way, the least costly way. And that's the sort of audit. It doesn't look at results as much as it looks at the actual step-by-step way of getting to those results. So you may have success in many different ways, but obviously the best way is the cheapest, easiest way. So do we audit that sort of process?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So we will, in terms of compliance, we will look at what are the barriers to compliance, and that what will come out of that is this step is too difficult, or it's too time consuming, or it's not possible, or we haven't got the things. So we will look at, and we ask the social workers, why didn't this happen? Why didn't you do this? And they will tell us what the barriers to being able to do
yes,
that.
But that's implying that it didn't work out properly. I'm worried about the cases that, yes, you got the result you wanted, you did achieve it, but are you auditing the way you got there? Because sometimes that's, we talked about, I mentioned the constraints, we all mentioned the constraints, the financial constraints. If we can find an easier, cheaper way of still getting the same good result, rather than be triggered by the fact that we didn't get there, do we ever audit the process by which we successfully got there?
Yes, we audit the process, and not just on cases that haven't achieved the outcome. So we will audit, we don't audit every single process that we do, but we will audit processes where we have either introduced a new process. We will audit it to see how it worked with people, and whether we were able to comply, and whether that was the best way of doing it when we developed them. I'm not sure if I'm
I don't think you're quite getting it still. Sorry, because I'm a fan of what's been going on, so I don't want to sound too critical. But I am concerned that when you get the result you want, there's not apparently a problem. We would then not, it would not trigger a closer look to say, did we get there by the easiest, cheapest, simplest route?
Yeah, possibly.
Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I do. But I suppose the only example I'll give is that the staff will tell us when they think, like I was saying about tracking, we've got lots of manual tracking in place. So the staff will tell us, the reason we're developing AI and using AI is because the staff are telling us when things are challenging for them to do, even though that's not necessarily, we're achieving the outcome, we're doing timeliness, managing the demand, but the staff are telling us that actually in order to do that, they're having to do X, Y, Z. So it is not the fastest, easiest way to get there.
Okay, so you're triggering it when they say this is a pain, this is a really painful process,
yes,
even though they're achieving it.
Yes.
Okay, all right, okay, it's enough of that.
I think Councillor Powell wanted to add something to that.
Thanks. So 2 points if I could. Before Councillor Highfield spoke, I was considering interjecting, reflecting on Councillor Proctor's question and something that part of Councillor Hitchener's style, you know, trying to reflect backwards. So in terms of the politics, I'm going to support what Councillor Highfield said, but I think it's important. In terms of the politics of it right now, in Cabinet, I do not have to convince anybody that this is the right thing to do. There is full support of all members of the Cabinet. And indeed, in the Ofsted monitoring reports, they have reported positively about the leader of the council's involvement in this. So I think it's important that that's acknowledged. But reflecting on Councillor Hitchener's point, I think that was also useful too, and I will reflect. David was asking about Tina directly about what might have been done earlier in the journey, so perhaps there's a conversation there. So I wanted to say that. Specifically on this point, it's not answering the question directly, but there is an element to it. In another role, so working together, as you know, is a statutory guidance, and in support of the statutory guidance, there are a range of West Midlands regional procedures for all professionals, not just children's social care, to use when working with children and families in particular circumstances. There are those at level 1, those at level 2, and there are also local procedures at level 3, depending on local need. I happen to, in a different role, chair the West Midlands Regional Procedures Group. And there is it depends on the kind of a priority. There's an annual, biannual or triannual review of each individual policy. And there is also a trigger, which most often will come from a learning review of some description or other, that there is a need to trigger a particular review. So I recall a particular case that happened elsewhere in the West Midlands, resulted in a local child safeguarding practice review, and that particular area wanted a more immediate review of a particular procedure to be conducted. So that kind of approach takes place at a regional level, and it is informed by local conversations, local learning and local experience.
If I can just point out, there is actually 3:17, and we are going to finish this item by 3:30. So we may have a couple more questions. Councillor Davis, you did have a question. It looks like Councillor Proctor may have one after that.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask a question on, we're a part of 14 local authorities, you said, that are in the area of West Midlands, looking after children. And the question I wanted to ask relates to our benchmarking of our processes and systems. And as we're improving at pace, and an excellent job you've done at achieving that fantastic result, bear in mind the other local authorities will have their own strengths and weaknesses. Do we have, as we move forward towards the future, the ability to look at what they're doing to help generate our plan for the future that's good? And consequently, are they looking at what we've done to achieve that result and therefore take stuff from us as well? And I was wondering if you could give us any information on that, please.
Yes, yeah, we absolutely do. So, yeah, I think 14 local authorities and 2 trusts come together. We have a directors meeting, and then under that directors meetings there are a wide range of subgroups. So our assistant directors of children's social care meet, our SEND group meet, our early help people meet, the families first leads are all meeting. So there's lots of opportunity to cross-reference, but we also have to kind of lean into those other people. But we also have a central priorities plan. So all of the local authorities come together and they talk about what their biggest challenges are. And from that, we develop our priority plan. What do we all want to improve? How are we going to do this together? And then we have an annual peer review. So we're for the last 2 years, 3 local authorities are partnered together, and we have a particular focus of that review. So you can look at what we're doing, we look at what you're doing. You can select within that what the focus of that tripartite review is. And we've also just this year, as part of our regional improvement, we're developing further that peer review and diagnostic, so that you can go in and get any other local authority to come and do a diagnostic peer review in your authority. We can request somebody to go into theirs. So really developing lots of opportunity there to do exactly as you've said.
Thank you. Councillor Proctor, did you have a question?
So the inspectors say we're getting better. The data says that we're getting better. The pace of improvement is quite recent. So maybe date back to February. There was a sort of turning point in February, and the monitoring letters often go. There has been improvement in pace since February 24. We know that the council, there's a legacy of things that probably wouldn't have gone the way they did now. And we have, I know, councillors who have individual bits of casework, and they think that that represents a kind of lack of improvement in the service. We know that there are people who've had experiences of children's services. We know that we don't get everything right now. So how should we understand that tension between the inspectors and the data say we're improving, but there are people, including members of the council, who say, well, that's not my experience?
I think it's a tough one to answer. I mean, first of all, we would be the first to say we're not perfect. We don't get everything right on every case, and we do where we can a lot of reflection. Whether that be informally through listening to people express their concerns, we informally look at things. We have a lot of informal resolution. We've not got the complaints element today, but there's lots of informal resolution to that, so very open to stepping back and saying, okay, maybe we should have done this differently. Similarly with the formal complaints process, we're open to, could we have done this differently, learning from that all the time. We are, though, with children's service as well. Rarely does everybody have all of the information around an individual case. We're not able to share all of that detailed information. And so it's very difficult for people who are only hearing one voice, one perception, one side. We have a lot of families where we have got separations within a family, within a relationship, where they have very strong, very loud, very different views, and one will be saying this is a brilliant service and they're listening to me, and the other saying this is a terrible service, nobody's listening to me. I think you have to draw the balance on accepting that it's either a case where you might not know all of the information, looking at the wider range of information that you have available, not just the individual bit in front of you, but as I say, accepting as well that we don't always get that right, and we are, we're happy to look and reflect on that when individuals or cases raised. And in my 12 months, I've had cases raised by a staff member, case raised by a parent, case raised by Councillor Powell, where we've looked and we've said, no, actually, I think we could have done this differently. Lots of our complaints, we will step down and we'll say, maybe we've not done this wrong, but we appreciate that you've not experienced it positively, and therefore, we will be uphold that you've not experienced it well and apologise for that. It's a complex business, and within all of that, despite wanting to ensure that we promote, because we definitely do want to make sure we support parents in the first instance to always be the best parents they can be, the reality is we are children's service and we are tasked with the protection of children, and so there will be a significant proportion of our cases where people won't be happy with our intervention, won't be happy with the way we've done it, and won't be happy with the outcome because it's resulted in a child protection plan or a Section 47 investigation or a removal of a child. All I can say is that we don't want to take those steps. We don't take those steps unless we believe that it is absolutely in the right interest of the child.
Thank you. Councillor Powell, did you want to come in on that? I see Councillor Hitchen has got a question, and before we finish at 3:30, I want to talk about child-friendly Herefordshire very quickly. Did you want to come in, Councillor Powell, or are you waiting for Councillor Hitchen's question?
I'll wait for Councillor Hitchen and then respond.
Okay, it may be relevant to you, Councillor Powell, as well. So partnership working is really important. It's not the sole responsibility of this council to look after children in the county. It's partly NHS, it's police, and of course there are pressures in both of those, and the changes are ahead with the integrated care board despairing. Maybe police areas will be changed. Again, to the kind of point of what have we learned? How have we got to where we've got to? Where we're working better with all, at least my perception is working better with all those partners. How can we make sure that with all the changes that are going to take place, that partnership working continues and is actually made better?
I think one of the main things for me is, and it comes back to that relationship-based practice, which is applicable to partnership working as it is to working with families. Relationship-based practice comes from stability of people in post as much as possible, so that's always helpful, but it is supported, healthy professional relationships are also supported by people who have got agreements, policies, processes, procedures. You know, they're not changing every 2 minutes. They're there, they're written, we're all working to them. If you add on to that a layer of people who are stable and who know each other, you get more and more positive, and that's when you and then you add on experienced people who, you know, understand big organisations like the police authority, for example, you know, who have got to do changes, and changes come. But if you've got healthy professional relationships, you can very quickly have those conversations. How are your changes going to impact on my world? What can we do about making sure we mitigate any risk that's going to impact negatively on what my workers do, and vice versa? And that's what we do through the Safeguarding Partnership, Children and Young People's Partnership, through the DCS network. I guess that's the only thing I would say. That's what I would say in terms of how we approach that.
Thank you. So back to Councillor Proctor's question. So in addition to what the Director has said, and I can't obviously guess what was in Ben's mind, but I sort of get the sentiment. You'll appreciate that on Taking Up Post, I met a number of individuals and families to hear of their experiences, and it would be fair to say that there were certain cases where there was an expectation of particular outcomes being achieved, which were never going to be achieved. But we did sit, we had detailed conversations, and in some cases, we provided some explanations, but we had to agree to disagree with the particular individuals or families concerned. Some of their experience was based on practice that where we are now, that might not have happened. But even that aside, the ultimate outcome, still would have been as it was. Since that time, as the Director said, a number of people have come to me. I forwarded the information to the Director, and she undertakes particular action in her team. And sometimes I don't get the operational information back because it's not appropriate, but I get the assurance back that the case has been considered, some decisions have been taken, and there's been some appropriate communication with the family. I think the role of Ofsted as the independent inspectorate, that their views are important. We take those into account. The Children's Commissioner also reports, of course, and chairs the Improvement Board. And the voices and the experience that we are currently capturing for those engaged with the service now perhaps tell us more about the way the service is now than when it was. Now, I'm not dismissing the experience of people in the past, absolutely not. But we are on an improvement journey. We've drawn on all of that learning, and it has informed all of the actions, all of the improvement work. We can't undo the past, but what we can do is we can learn from the past to make the future better, and that is what we seek to do. It is a really tricky balance. We're not dismissive of the past. We've learned from it. We've brought it into what we do. and we look to our families, our children now, and the Inspectorate and the Children's Commissioner to triangulate that information for us.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Yeah, I think it is an important point, and it encapsulates quite well the discussion that we've had, is that actually we have been on a very difficult journey. I mean, I do think that there might be room in the future for more focus groups to help that that widen that input as to sort of how people are experiencing the service. But that possibly is another discussion. I think, what we've heard is that we've been on a long, difficult journey. There is light at the end of the tunnel. It's looking good. It's looking strong. All the signs are really great, and I think we would probably like to express an appreciation to all of those staff who have been taken along on that journey and put considerable effort and dedication into that, and that journey to changing the culture has been a really important one all round. I just wanted to finish this item. Now 1 minute over, just to mention child-friendly Herefordshire, because we've talked about what comes next and what, post-improvement board and all of that, and we've spoken here quite a lot about child-friendly Herefordshire, what that might look like. I've seen it in the phase 3 improvement plan, which is great, but I don't see any formal mechanism or adoption of policy or within the council by which we sort of pin that under. So I just wondered, is there a framework? Do we need to develop a framework? I'm looking at the child-friendly Cov. We all went to Coventry and had a look at looking at their impact report this morning, just reminding me how important that is, that young people have ownership of the county that they belong to, and that they feel well supported, loved, participating. So I'm just wondering about how we get a mechanism in place or a framework in place so that it is actually part of the kind of formal council policy.
I'm not sure what a framework would look like. I think for me, we're at the stage where, as you've done today, that we keep asking the question. And I've done it at members' briefings, and we kind of do it at different forums. Child friendly looks like us being able to give examples of where we have thought about how children and young people and families are going to be impacted on by whatever activity or development is taking place in the council. And also think about have we created as many opportunities as we can to listen to the views of children and young people as we develop those very changes or developments across the county as a council. There was the development of the child's voice across the council, which I know was led by the previous interim transformation lead. We need to pick that up, and I think if anywhere, being able to keep coming back and talking to that. Where are we giving examples? I mean, I can give an example in the economy and infrastructure department, for example, when they were looking at their transport policy for new transport developments. They came to me and said, have you got an idea, Tina, where we could contact children and young people? And we put them in touch, and we put it in the school's newsletter, and it kind of went out to schools. I mean, that was great for me, because I think prior to the conversation, they wouldn't have thought about that or thought to ask that. So I think keeping it alive and constantly asking that question, what's happening new? And we have the conversation at Cabinet, what's happening new? And have we thought about the impact on children and families, and or created an opportunity for them to feed into it? that's really a way of working for me, as opposed to a framework that we kind of keep coming back to.
Okay, thank you. I still think that we need some sort of a policy or a statement or something. So potentially we'll take the 10-minute break now. We'll have a look at the recommendations and then we'll come back to finish the agenda items, if that's okay. But thank you very much. I think that was really interesting. I think it was great to sort of have positive news, and it was very clear. So good. The next, let's hope, phase 3 takes us even further. Thank you. Can we just make sure that the live stream is paused? please.
We have a special rule, David. The one who's last for the meeting
Live
has to
stream
pay
is
for the
back on.
visits.
Robert, I think.
Confirm Chair, the live
We-
stream has been restarted.
Thank you. We are live streaming. Right. So we've got a couple of recommendations from that part of the agenda, which, if you would like to read out, please, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Chair. The committee is proposing two recommendations, which are as follows. One, for the Executive to ensure that the Council's digital, data and technology teams are sufficiently staffed and properly resourced in the next budget to ensure that all of the data needs of the Children and Young People Directorate are met. And the second recommendation is for full Council to debate and commit to the principle of working for a child-friendly Herefordshire.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have anything to say about those recommendations? I would quite like to just vote on them as one set and move on. Yeah, happy to do that. Is everybody happy with those recommendations? Okay.
Hello.
Sorry, Claire. Hello, welcome. I forgot that you had come and welcome. Unfortunately, you can't actually vote on these, but you can make a comment if you'd like to.
Well, I may have missed it, but I just wanted to make sure that you know that everything is going to be monitored in detail. You know, via the quality. The quarterly quantity assurance report of the Children's Improvement Board. Are we going to be able to follow up on this?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does make sense, and I think we did discuss that in quite a lot of detail. So I'm afraid you have joined. You've missed that bit of the conversation. You're going to have to catch up on the recording.
Okay, as long as it's mentioned.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so everybody in favour of these recommendations then? Right, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the next item, which is the Early Help Task and Finish group. So we have... sorry, my script is slightly wrong there. Right, we have actually circulated the draft for the Task and Finish on Early Help. I'm just wondering, I'm looking to you, the scrutiny officer, if you would like to speak to this, but you do look like you're busy. Would you like to talk about the Task and Finish that we're proposing?
Of course, Chair. The committee has met a couple of times recently to discuss ideas for different ways of working and to embrace the new ways of working as endorsed by Council through the scrutiny review. This committee has repeatedly looked at the topic of early help within the formal committee system and has remarked in its discussions and feedback on those meetings that the formal committee system didn't really seem to quite hit the spot or provide the arena to look at the topic in sufficient detail. So the committee has proposed what we have here is a task and finish group to look at early help in the round, looking both at the targeted help that the council provides in partnership through the safeguarding partnership, but also the sort of pastoral and early help that's more widely available through Herefordshire, a topic of significant complexity that just couldn't be carried out within the context of a 3-hour meeting. So the terms of reference in front of you begin to put into place some of those ideas about how we might look at this topic in more in depth, using different ways of working through a committee-based system, going and holding road shows, talking to groups, talking to families through focus groups, lots of different ideas there of ways that we can answer some of the questions and the objectives. It's only in terms of reference. What we would have to do following this is build a programme of work that together would answer some of the questions and the objectives in that, and the group will meet once the committee agrees to this task and finish group, should it do so, and then it will report back in due course in terms of its programme of work, and then eventually a final report for this committee to agree on and to forward on wherever necessary.
Right, thank you very much. And the meeting that we had to discuss this was actually quite exciting. The ideas that were coming forward were exciting, looking at how we could work with talk community and the service itself, and how we could actually have some road shows and get the views of people from the different market towns and the city itself. So I'm pretty excited about this task and finish. Does anybody have any questions about it? Yes, Councillor Proctor and then Councillor Hitchner.
So in some of the informal discussions, I think our intention was that this would be work largely of this committee, and it's a task and finish group because we're advised that that's the most appropriate way to lay it out. But I just want to check, are we, because there is a line there about advertising the task and finish group and collecting expressions of interest from councillors, which you're perfectly entitled to do to set up a task and finish group. But is it your intention to involve lots of councillors from across the council, or to try and involve mostly the committee?
I think that there may be people, there may be other councillors that are interested in joining this task and finish, and I think that it probably would be quite useful to extend that out to them. Likewise, there may actually be co-opted members who may be a really useful part of this task and finish, which has been branded as a task and finish, but as we did discuss previously, was sort of more of a sort of, sorry, what did you term it? Inquiry, appreciative inquiry. Thank you. The word just went straight out my head. But that is my understanding, is that it would, as a task and finish, they are generally open to sort of membership from other members of the council. Yes, Tina, you've got a comment.
I think when we had the kind of pre-meet to talk about this idea, our vision was that rather than have a scrutiny meeting on early help, that it would be really inclusive if scrutiny were able to get out and about in the county and look at what early help was out there, both talking to providers, giving them the opportunity to speak directly to scrutiny members, and also talking to staff and workers within those provisions to see what was available, and people in the community. And we were talking about how in a previous authority I'd done, early help events out in the community, which coupled up as an opportunity for both providers to connect and people to see what was available in that local community. And within that, we talked about making sure that all councillors got notice of when the marketplace events took place, so that they could come along and see what was happening in their area. I think I'd envisage that they would be invited and be able to do that, and then could potentially feed back perhaps a written comment or view to scrutiny, rather than the scrutiny itself becoming a much bigger task and finish group. I'm not sure. I think you'd have to be, I think if you open it out, I don't know the logistics, but if you open it out, are you going to open it out to so many people, limited? If you don't, and you open it out to everybody, you could end up with a task and finish group of how many councillors are there? And that would be an unmanageable task. And if you are going to limit it to the amount of people that are co-opted, how are you going to select who's co-opted? So for me, it was more about making sure that scrutiny get out and about, give providers the opportunity to talk to you about what's available, and that other people have the opportunity to feed in a written response about what they think is working well or perhaps not working well in their own areas, that then scrutiny would be able to be supported to reading them all and taking them into account as it comes up with an analysis. Does that make sense? That's what I was kind of...
Yeah, it does make sense. I'll hold that thought. Councillor Hitchner, you had a question, then Councillor Highfield.
Yes, I was wondering whether we might have one of the events in somewhere like Peterchurch. My thinking being that we're a very rural county, and all these events are actually in market towns, and for someone to come from Lewis Harold or from Longtown into Hereford, they probably won't. And they're up at Peter Church House and established quite a good talk community hub. I think there's engagement in the local community there. And I think it would be good to get out to see what's happening in a very much more rural place. And just looking around, there are 3 of us from rural areas and 2 from Hereford. Anyway, that's just my observation, Tina, if that was possible.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've kind of had a bit of a logistics meeting with a key group of my staff, Talk Community, Public Health, and also my staff as well. And we have based it around doing something around the 6 areas, but we're just looking for any place that can accommodate. I mean, when I've done it previously, I've just done it all in the local high school or primary school, and we've used their sports hall and invited lots of people to come along. It's really for providers to come along and tell people what they're doing in that area, whether it be in the rural, but definitely doing the rural areas. But I don't know whether we can do.
So, Councillor Highfield, before you go, if we can just hear from the Statutory Scrutiny Officer, please, just on how you're envisaging it could work.
Absolutely. All of the suggestions that have been made in this discussion right now can very easily all be incorporated within a task and finish group. It's a naming mechanism really by which we carry out a piece of work, but it's one that's established within the Constitution, so it saves time setting it up this way rather than having to explain what you're trying to do all the time. All of the ideas that you've had, all of that can be done within the task and finish group. A group is agreed by this committee. It wouldn't be all of the elected members, it would be members selected by the chair. What we would do is we would put an advertisement out to all elected members to say we are setting up this task and finish group, and to invite expressions of interest from across the local authority. It might well end up being everybody in this committee if that's the people that nominate themselves, but that's really for the discretion of the chair. It would be kept to a small group of between 4 and 7 elected members rather than the entirety of the electorate. The entirety of council. It wouldn't be all 53 members, just those that sit within that group. The advantage being then is it allows us to draw from the pool of all elected members and the wider public if the committee decide that there is a person out there that they could co-opt into that group that could provide perspective, expertise, time, enthusiasm, whatever really, to complement that group. Just really to provide that assurance that all of these ideas can be brought within that, and placing it within a task and finish group is, in my opinion, the easiest and best way of providing that focus to deliver those objectives.
Hello.
Hello.
I don't have a
Claire.
hand to put up.
Claire, that's fine. Claire,
I don't have a hand.
Claire,
Yes.
you may speak.
Yes. Thank you. Because I don't have a hand to put up, so I'm sorry I'm interrupting. Can I just say, what about town councils? Are they being involved in this? And also, we've got Amy Williams. She comes over to Bromyard, and she is very proactive in anything to do with early help and finishing groups.
Yes, I imagine this is probably what we can add to the detail, but as far as I understand that town councils, when we initially discussed it, town councils would be invited to attend the sessions. So I think the finer detail is really we can iron that out as a committee. But when we meet, Councillor Highfield, did you have a question, or has it been answered?
Not a question. I wanted to make the point that I agree with what Tina said, and I agree with what Daniel said. I think the actual core group of the scrutiny committee of the task and finish group should be a limited number. It might include outsiders. It might include somebody from the town council, but it needs to be a limited group. Otherwise, it's not manageable. But its task is a little different. The last one I was on, which was actually through this committee, we gave all the work to the council officers to give us all the answers that we needed, and that I don't think that was the best way to go about it. I like the idea of going out and finding our own information to a degree. Of course, we can get stuff from the council officers, but if we can find our own information as well, and if we perhaps do co-opt somebody from outside who's an expert, that helps us gather the information we need to make a good report at the end of it, because that's the objective. We want to produce something that has some depth to it, some value to add to the whole picture, rather than us just being, and that was Daniel's idea originally. I think that we, in Scrutiny, it's all very well having lots of formal scrutiny meetings and asking questions and publicising it, but it's a good idea to spend a bit more of our time looking more deeply into particularly troublesome issues. If we can find troublesome issues to look at so we can help the process along, that's extremely valuable. But I'd like to see it, the core group, be still limited. You know, we can ask anybody we like for information. We can go out there hopefully and find out information, talk to people. But I think it needs to be a core group.
Okay, thank you. And I would hope that actually the members of the Scrutiny Committee would put themselves forward for that anyway. It is something that we've talked about since the beginning of this committee, early help, and I think it's certainly, there've been massive developments in terms of early help over the last couple of years, so it would be a really helpful piece of work for this committee to have completed, and I would certainly hope that the existing members would put themselves forward. So in terms of next steps, at the moment we agree to these terms of reference and then build a work program. We're not going to do that right now, I assume. We have got a work programming session coming up, so that would be part of it. Yep.
I think. Well, I mean, you might well want to do some of that work, but I would imagine that it would be the task and finish group that would do that work to focus on the scope and the program of work and bring that back to the committee for them to agree.
Yeah, we could talk about it. If we're members of the group, we could talk about how we see it evolving. Go back to you as the chair of the big committee and say, this is how we propose to structure it. Are you happy with that? And then we can, go. And then we just head off with it.
Okay, and we bring that back to the September meeting.
You could bring the scope back to the September meeting, the programme of work, just to provide that transparency to the public about the work that you're up to. I mean, to be clear as well, Chair, you may wish to chair this task and finish group, but you don't necessarily have to. The Environment and Sustainability Committee, the Economy and Environment Committee, apologies, is carrying out a similar task and finish group around passenger transport and bus services, and it's actually their deputy chair that will be chairing that group.
Okay, thank you. And we don't have to make any more of those decisions now. Basically, we agree these terms of reference.
That's it.
Okay, all right. Is everybody in agreement with the terms of reference? Yep. Brilliant. Thank you very much. So then we just move on to the item on the work programme, which we have a work programme there that will be amended slightly because of the deferment of the complaints and compliments issue, but which will be included into the September meeting, and we also need to sit down as a committee and look again at the work programme and obviously this item, the task and finish. So as the work programme stands, I did see also I'm sure if that was a supplement to the work programme, was the recommendations tracker. Thank you very much. I think that's quite helpful in informing our work programme, also looking at the issues that we have discussed and raised and the recommendations that we've made, and sort of seeing if there is anything from that helps inform our work programme going forward. So is everybody happy to agree the work programme as it stands at the moment? Yeah. Thank you. Everybody agrees that. So that just brings me to the date of the next meeting, which is Tuesday, the 16th of September at 2 p.m. And I think then, unless there's any business, I don't see.
Clarify, we're still having a lines of inquiry planning meeting on the 11th. Is that still on? I've got it in my diary, but
Have we? Is there a lines of inquiry meeting on the 11th? I'll ask the clerk if
11th of which month?
September.
11th of September. I've got it in my diary. I just wanted to clarify if that's still on. As far as I'm aware, if we've got the meeting on the
Yeah.
16th.
Yep, I think it's fine as far as we're aware.
Okay, you're okay with that?
We've already got for 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's
Yep.
still,
That's still there.
what, 11 o'clock. Oh, well, that's one difference.
Right.
We'll add it on.
Okay. Well, we'll double check that about the lines of inquiry. Okay. So thank you for all attending. Can I? Sorry.
I think there might be some concern that actually you might have inadvertently crowded your September meeting quite a bit. I mean, you don't have to make a decision now on this, but perhaps you might want to agree to bring another work programme topic to September, just clarifying that. Obviously, you've agreed to bring the complaints onto that meeting, and it's already quite a busy meeting. And
Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm just trying to actually get it on the to call it up on here. So, do we move something from the work programme? So it's youth justice. We're looking at youth justice and the objectives to be agreed. The pursue, prevent, protect, prepare. And then there was also the review of the Safeguarding Partnerships annual, their annual review of effectiveness. Yes.
Can I suggest that you, the chair, go and look at, we probably can't do all of those, but rather than us just debate it here, if you, as the chair, decide what are the suitable items for next September.
Right, thank you. I'll have a conversation with the director and with the scrutiny officer, and we can make a decision if everybody's happy about that. Yep, good. Right, so we can move on from the work programme. I think that's it. Thank you all for attending. Thank you very much for the information from the service. Can I ask that, unless you have formal business, oh well, everybody please exit the Plough Lane site. Can I please check with the Democratic Services team that the live stream has been switched off and we're no longer